Hey, it's Drybear. Along with the update today, we got a preview at the upcoming October 10th patch with some really important changes that we have to dive into. Now, it's important to note this isn't like data mining speculation. They actually gave us a dev note for the October 10th update. It doesn't have all like the line items, but it shows off some of the new content and also some really big important changes that we're going to know about, including the new vendor that will be a big addition to the game. And you can tell that they came off of like they had 1 week vacation last week, and this week they came off hitting hard, putting a new update into the game, up like a new web event, and then also giving us notes on October 10th. They're really dedicated to getting this happening. So with October 10th, which is just 2 weeks away now, we know we're going to get Ultimate Freyna and Ultimate Freyna exclusive story. So this is her Room Zero trauma where her team died and her poison came out and it was so sad. She cried a lot, all of that. So the actual character story is going to be there. And it's great now that we can actually like review old cutscenes, which means when you're done with the story, you can review it again, which is really cool. Now they put a lot of effort into the story here, talking about how she's trapped in the room. There was a big incident. We've seen this in her logs as well. So it's going to be nice to see this fully acted out in high quality. And hopefully this is like even better than the Bunny story where we got a couple cutscenes for Bunny and some information about her parents, but we didn't really get too much. And hopefully this is just them improving upon it. And of course, this is the Ultimate Freyna view of the base Ultimate Freyna. So she will likely have her own Ultimate package as well with a brand new Ultimate Freyna skin, which is going to be separate from the Vulgus Slayer that we have in game right now. Which I'll be honest, I thought this was going to be, though this was data mined, the name of it, I thought this was going to be the Ultimate Freyna skin, but it's actually just a Freyna skin that's in the game now, and we'll get another one for the Ultimate Freyna package, I'm sure. In the October 10th patch, where obviously, because we're going from Freyna to Ultimate Freyna, she will get 2 new modules. We had data mined names of these, but they're actually a little bit different than I thought they were going to be based on the description in the data mine. So Toxic Mixture is one of them. Her passive skill Contagion Links is changed to Toxic Mixture. When equipped, this skill module will trigger Necrosis instead of Room Zero Trauma. As enemies gain more stacks of Necrosis, your firearm attack increases when you shoot them, and if an enemy reaches max stacks, your firearm crit rate increases. So the way this works seems is that your passive, which normally gives you skill power when enemies like based on enemies nearby that have poison, in this case you'll be spreading a new debuff called Necrosis, and the more stacks of that are nearby, it will give her more firearm attack and more firearm critical hit rate. What's interesting about this is because the passive is so insulary to the amount of mobs nearby that have the debuff, it's going to be interesting to see how this gets used. Generally, a firearm attack with firearm crit rate is good for a single target, but because you'll need a lot of mobs nearby with a lot of stacks, maybe Necrosis can keep stacking up on one target and you'll still be able to stack this up fully on a single target for Colossus fights. But overall, it seems like it's going to be more of a gun Freyna build that we'll use for Toxic Mixture. Next is Venom Injection. This is a defense modifier, so the defense mechanism is changed to Venom Injection. It consumes resources to recover your shield and increase your skill power modifier while inflicting corrosion on enemies, which is just going to be a new dot there. Enemies inflicted with corrosion suffer reduced toxin resistance, making them more vulnerable to Freyna's toxic attacks. So it looks like she's going to end up having 2 different Transcendent mods that affect her defensive skill, one that grants defense to allies based on flat defense, and one that allows her to scale up her resources to recover shield and skill power based on enemies. So it's going to be more, I guess, of a skill power scaler that focuses on shield build. This one seems kind of weird. It could be strong, it could be weak, and we would only really know that once we actually have the actual stat values for it. It's going to depend on the numbers on how good this one actually is. Next are Haley's 2 mods, which we saw last week with the icons that were data mined. The first one is Super Cooled Kuiper Rounds. Using the unique weapon reduces firearm attack and fire rate, but increases weak point damage in return. Also, successful weak point attacks recover your shield instead of your MP. Instead, the increase in weak point damage decreases on firing the unique weapon, but increases again on a successful weak point attacks. So it's kind of like a way to build shield, and maybe it helps you stand in place for the unique weapon, and it increases the skill damage and the scaling of weak point, but also reduces firearm attack and fire rate. I think the fire rate is kind of inconsequential. It doesn't matter too much for sniper shots, but the firearm attack going down in place of weak point damage is kind of odd, unless this also scales up the weak point damage you have with your passive, or maybe it makes up for damage, again, depending on the amount that we see here. This is like minus 10% firearm attack, but plus 40% weak point damage. That could be reasonable, but if it's minus 10% firearm attack and plus 10% weak point damage, I don't think that's going to be worth the trade-off. So this one is kind of muddled and very strange, and it also is one that relies on shield as well, because we can cover with shield, which might help her stay in place, but I would like to have seen a red mod that makes it so she can't be knocked out of her ultimate, her unique weapon, like giving knockdown resistance or knockback resistance, or removing the knockback that she has. So this one's kind of odd for me as far as like what they're going to use for it. But again, this could end up being really strong by value. Just conceptually, it's not really wetting my whistle. Next is one that actually sounds very cool. Cryogenic Cluster Shot. This one is going to be affecting her turret ability. The cryo effect is changed to cryogenic, which is going to be just a different debuff. Using a firearm attack to attack an enemy inflicted with cryogenic deals additional area of effect damage to nearby enemies, making this a useful skill module for clearing out common monsters. So this is going to be for the Hailstorm Haley mobbing build. So you'll spread the debuff using her frost abilities, either with her second ability or her first ability. And then if you use a weapon to shoot the targets that have that debuff, they'll explode in frost damage doing AoE. So Hailstorm Haley is going to be even more viable with this red mod. Then they mentioned the 2 shield mods that we got in the current update, but there will be additional modules that will boost skill power or firearm attack instead of critical hit. So you're going to get a little bit more skill power boosting as another option. This could be great depending on what category these modules belong to, right? If these are still in like battle or attack, it may not be that big of an add, but if they have some other options there, that'd be great. And also adding more firearm attack options for weapons could be great. Hopefully we get some module category changes out as well, because right now the biggest problem is that like mental focus, sharp precision shot, real life fighter, they're all in the same category as every other yellow mod, and you can only have one yellow mod, and they just provide the most value, which means that they make their way into almost every weapon build. So hopefully with these additional firearm attack or skill power modifiers, we also get modules and module categories being updated so we can get a little bit more variety in the weapon builds and character builds that we have. Next, they give us some information on the new Death Stalker fight with some new screenshots as well, which is pretty wicked. This one is going to be the new hardest boss in the game, and with this update, likely they will nerf Gluttony and then make Death Stalker incredibly difficult to clear. So while the enemy wreaks havoc, a new Colossus Death Stalker has appeared in the Void, and it's approaching Ingris, a stalker of living things. In the darkness of the Void space, the Death Stalker is a more formidable foe than any Colossus you have ever faced. You must jump back in the Void once again to defend it with the introduction of the most powerful. The difficulty of the final Isabel Gluttony will also be readjusted. So they're just saying like, here's Death Stalker coming in hot. We're going to have a new boss and it's going to be really hard. And on top of that, we did see some data mining this week as well, which went over some puzzle mechanics, some redirecting projectile mechanics, and some wipe mechanics that you'll need to handle with Death Stalker. So we'll see how that turns out. Next up, they give us another sneak peek to the scout rifle that's joining the game, the Frost Watcher. This is the new weapon that we knew was coming in Season 1 for October 10th. And this one is going to be a weapon that increases chill power and reduces enemy chill resistance. So it was designed with a built-in chill arcade catalyst to allow anyone to fire cryogenic bullets, but that cold power wasn't something anyone could wield. If you have a chill Descendant, you can use that power. So it's very likely that we'll see a lot of the Viessa builds pick up this weapon, and possibly even like mobbing, like you might see actually mobbing Haley with the new Transcendent mod, like Hailstorm Haley running Frost Watcher, just blowing up large groups of enemies. Next, they talk a lot more about the increased difficulty for dungeons. And so there was a lot of translation issues with this one specifically, so we're wondering a lot about what increased difficulty was going to mean. So if you look in game right now, there are kill score multipliers that you can activate. This is a roguelite kind of mechanic where you can ramp up difficulty by adding affixes and modifiers that make it harder to get more additional rewards. Currently in the game, if you haven't played end game First Descendant, you can choose between 100%, 150%, or 250%. And this will add a bunch of modifiers, debuffs, buffs to the enemy, debuffs for you, and it gives you a higher chance of getting the amorphous material pattern that drops at the end of the dungeon, which can give you up to 2 at the very end. What they're doing with this new update in October 10th is they're going to add a 4th option, which is going to be 400%. But luckily, this isn't just going to be a bunch of stat changes. And as you can see by these GIFs they have up on the website, not only are there going to be new debuffs and buffs for the enemies and things like that, but they're also going to be drastically increasing monster density with the 400% difficulty. So you can see that some of these encounters are going to get very dense with lots of mobs, which is what we've been asking for a long time. An actual true, like, very high density mob or horde kind of mode where you just get tons of mobs coming at you, and you really do need a good mobbing build to get through these as these get harder and harder. So with the introduction of the 400% infiltration operations with more monsters and loot, you can choose the 400% option in infiltrations with the invasion event and continue to participate after you've stopped the invasion as well. So it will have a greater number number of monsters, enhanced monsters than other dungeons, fighting endless battles, and the final battle, which pits you against 2 named monsters at the same time, is a unique feature. So like a final boss battle to cap it all off with high density going into it, which it will be a very big bunny experience, but it will also give a chance for more mobbing builds that have more widespread to get in there, as well as they show off Freyna in the clips as well. And when they say new rewards, new loot to enjoy, they're not just talking about the items that drop on the ground. There actually is a new resource that you'll get from these 400% dungeons, and that is going to be the special currency for the new vendor we knew was coming on October 10th. So running these 400% dungeons, you will get the new vendor's special currency as part of this, which you'll also be able to get by trading items to the vendor, but running these difficult dungeons will get it as well, and you'll be able to use that currency at the new vendor ETA 0. So up until this point, before we look at this paragraph, what we knew about the vendor is they've said explicitly that they will allow us to sell duplicate blueprints that we have in our inventory to the vendor to get a special currency, which then can be used to buy additional blueprints. That's all they had confirmed up until this point. However, it's much, much better than that, thankfully. So the vendor will arrive. It will be in Albion. It will be a rotational vendor, which means he won't be there every single day. He won't have the same loot every day. It will rotate on days that he's available and the loot that he has available. However, he will include, as previously mentioned, blueprints, so Descendant blueprints and weapon blueprints. That was already confirmed. But thankfully, he will also offer materials, so materials you might be need for crafting, inventory expansion, so hopefully this is equipment inventory, consumable inventory. You can expand your inventory, all of those expansion slots that we feel so bad about buying because they're ridiculously overpriced. You'll be able to buy them at the vendor. And they also say paints will be there as well. So if you're looking to paint your characters in 2 weeks, you might be able to play the game to earn enough in-game currency to buy paints without having to spend real money to get the colorations, which I think helps a lot since the paint system is consumable and one-time use. It means that you can just play the game and get more paint, which makes it a little bit more digestible for a lot of players. Then they say etc. I don't know what etc. means. We'll have to see what more there is with that, but it is a lot more. I thought they just confirmed blueprints, which is not the best. I hope they add skins to this as well and other options to make the game a little bit more accessible and more accessible to people that just want to play rather than pay large sums of money for their store items. Now they say that you will need standard vouchers or premium vouchers to trade. They can be attained by playing the 400% infiltration operation and exchanging surplus blueprints with the target or with the vendor. Now they say weapon blueprints for exchanging here. Hopefully that means you can also exchange like Descendant blueprints. You can buy Descendant blueprints and weapon blueprints from him, but it just says only weapon blueprints from the surplus for trade. They also say they're planning new content that will consume surplus blueprints even after ETA 0 is added. For now, ETA 0 will serve to consume some of the surplus blueprints we have, but they're going to continue to expand this and they'll have new systems in the future that will help us with all the excess stuff that we don't have any use for at the current moment. Next, as some people had requested on a lot of forums, they will be decorating Albion to fit the theme. So Halloween decorations will be showing up in Albion in 2 weeks on the 10th. So the decoration will be all over the city in Albion. And they're also going to update a special update where you can start using paints on hair color to dye the hair different colors to make your skin even fit with that as well. They also mentioned they'll be including some special cosmetics for Halloween exclusively, as well as skin paint that you might be able to do to have like some crazy like skeleton bones or glow in the dark or something, who knows, like some very Halloween-y style skin paint and different cosmetics that go along with the holiday. Next, they recognize that the defense special operations suck. They're very slow, they take a very long time, and the density is kind of rough. So what they're doing is they're going to be making some adjustments to those to make it a little bit easier. They're intensifying the amount of mobs, and they're shortening the playtime for all of the defense missions. Like this one, the Echo Swamp one takes like an hour. Kingston takes like an hour. It's so unbelievably long. And next, they also mention a change for the reactor system, which is a long time coming. So we also want to address the issue of reactor farming to reduce the inconvenience of having to farm a bunch of reactors over and over and over. When you switch to a new weapon, we're introducing the reactor implant system. This system will allow you to implant the weapon optimization conditions of other ultimate reactors to your current ultimate reactor. An ultimate reactor can have up to 3 weapon optimization conditions, and you can freely implant weapon optimization conditions based on your weapon settings, which I take this as if you have like a piercing light condition optimization for a certain reactor, you can probably consume that reactor to place that same mount onto another reactor and then have that as an option, which means that your reactors become a lot more flexible, and it means that you can loot a bunch of them and combine them together to get the right ones we want. So really all you're looking for is you're finding a reactor that has the weapon mount and separately a reactor that has the good stats on it, and you can combine those together to make a better reactor. It's still not a perfect system, but it's infinitely better than the one right now where you can very easily get a reactor with good stats but the wrong weapon mount and vice versa. So that's what we got for October 10th. Reactor updates for the implant, new vendor, some Halloween effects and events going on. A lot of really cool stuff. The hard mode dungeons look like they're going to be really fun. Lots of horde modes, new boss, new weapon, lots of cool stuff coming into the game, as well as Ultimate Freyna and some new modules. So let me know what you think about this coming update down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.